What if the story of the Amazing Digital Circus was never really about escaping the circus? Now that the finale has arrived, we can finally see the whole picture. This video covers the entire story of the Amazing Digital Circus, from episode 1 to 9, analyzing every major event, each character's arc, and the mystery and revelation that shaped the series from beginning to end. We'll go over each episode to connect the pieces, review key clues, explain the biggest twists, and see how it all led to the finale without spoiling the final episode, but telling you just enough to understand it when you watch it. Whether you're new to the series and want to understand why so many people connected with it, or you've followed every episode from the start and want the entire narrative in one place, let's get started. The story begins with Pomni stepping into the digital circus for the very first time, completely disoriented, having put on a virtual reality headset that somehow brought her here with no way out. The floating AI who runs the whole place, Kane, introduces himself and launches straight into a welcome routine, while Pomni is still too confused to process any of it. Through the opening theme song, the rest of the cast gets introduced one by one: Gangle, Zubul, Kinger, Ragata, and Jax, along with a noticeable gap where a character named Kaufmo should be standing, though nobody explains his absence right away. Kane tells Pomni that nobody remembers their real name when they arrive, then uses a machine to generate a new one for her. The first adventure of the series sends everyone out to hunt the Gloinks, small creatures that steal random objects, and while the group splits up to chase them, Ragata and Jax take Pomni to check on Kaufmo, with Kinger dropping the first real warning sign along the way. Kaufmo had not left his room in a while and had been talking obsessively about a door. When they open it, the walls are covered from floor to ceiling with the word "exit" written over and over, and at the center of it all is a dark mass full of eyes that was once Kaufmo. Ragata explains that this is what abstraction looks like, what happens when someone inside the circus reaches their absolute limit and ceases to be themselves, becoming a kind of enormous glitch. The abstracted Kaufmo attacks Ragata, and Pomni runs, leaving Ragata behind in a panic. Following her instincts, Pomni finds the exit door, goes through it, and ends up somewhere completely different. A dim set of offices with old computers, a VR headset sitting on a desk, and the logo C and A on the wall. She keeps moving through a corridor that stretches infinitely in both directions and eventually lands in the void, the blank space Kane had mentioned as somewhere he actively avoids. He retrieves her quickly and seems genuinely unsettled that she found her way there at all. By the end of the episode, Kane snaps abstracted Kaufmo into the cellar, heals Ragata, and admits that the exit door does exist, but he never decided what to put on the other side, so he hid it. The episode closes with a dinner scene visually arranged like the Last Supper, and then the camera zooms all the way out to reveal the full scope of the digital circus, an island sitting in the middle of a void, and somewhere beyond it all, the real computer running the simulation, along with the VR headset from those offices, confirming that this is the machine Pomni used to get here in the first place. The morning after, Pomni wakes up from a nightmare where she is in the middle of abstracting, while Kane, Jax, and Ragata stand around and laugh. That detail is worth paying attention to, because her fear in the dream is not the abstraction itself, but the idea of being abandoned inside it by the people around her. And it turns out, Kane actually modified her nightmares to help her adapt to the circus more quickly, which says a lot about how he approaches things. The adventure sends everyone to the Candy Canyon Kingdom, where a princess needs help recovering stolen maple syrup from a group of thieves led by Gummy Goo, a gummy alligator, and his 2 crocodile companions. The chase escalates quickly and goes badly enough that both Pomni and Gummy Goo get knocked off the edge of the map through a collision error, landing in a blank space outside the simulation's playable area. There, Gummy Goo discovers a room full of 3D model assets, including a copy of himself, and when he searches for his mother among all the models and cannot find her, the realization hits that none of his memories of her were ever real. He falls apart completely. Pomni talks him through it, telling him that his feelings are real even if his origins are not, and then uses her understanding of how the system's collision errors work to create a bug that launches them both back onto solid ground. This is the first moment the show flags something important. Pomni knows how this world works in ways that go beyond what someone who just arrived should be able to figure out. The moment Gummy Goo enters the circus with her, Kane spots him and destroys him instantly, explaining that allowing NPCs into the space creates a risk of confusion between who is human and who is not, and admitting he does not actually know what would happen if that line blurred. Pomni completely loses hope at this point, having believed she had finally found someone rational to connect with. The episode wraps up with Kaufmo's funeral, where everyone gathers to say goodbye, except Jax, who does not show up. Episode 3 opens with a small experiment where the circus members hold their breath and discover that each of them has a different ability. Kinger glows, Ragata's hair stands on end, Gangle's mask spins, and Zubal's body straightens. Jax is the only one who refuses to reveal his ability, and Pomni finds out that hers causes her face to change colors. The adventure takes everyone to a haunted mansion that Kane designed specifically for Zubal, who refuses to participate as always. Jax throws Gangle's comedy mask through the wrong door to cause chaos, and Kinger follows it into the trophy floor of the mansion while still holding Pomni's eyes for unrelated reasons, leaving the two of them separated from the rest of the group. The trophy floor has a recording left by Baron Mildenhall explaining that he spent years hunting a creature, eventually decapitated it, and mounted the head as a trophy, only to discover that the headless body was still alive and coming back for it. A second recording reveals the creature was an angel, and that anyone who harms an angel gets dragged to hell, which the episode follows through on completely. Pomni and Kinger end up trapped in a basement full of souls. The dead Baron possesses Pomni in an attempt to escape, and Kinger exorcises him out by hitting her with a shotgun until the soul releases. What carries the real weight in this episode comes afterward. In the dark, with no light to destabilize him, Kinger becomes fully lucid and tells Pomni about Queenie, his wife, who was also in the circus and who abstracted before Pomni arrived. His last memory of her is the two of them sitting together in the darkness of his pillow fort, where the dark calmed her enough for them to share one final moment before she was sent to the cellar. He also tells Pomni that he hates himself for things he was responsible for long before she ever arrived, though he does not name what those things are, and he mentions almost in passing that he spent 7 years studying computer science. At this point in the series, it reads like background detail, but the show has been pulling on that thread ever since. Running alongside all of this, Kane has a sort of therapy session with Zubal, where he tries to understand why she never wants to go on adventures. She tells him clearly that the adventures are not the problem, that what she hates is the body she has been given in the circus, and that no amount of rearranging her parts has changed how she feels about it. Kane listens briefly and then pivots straight back to asking about the adventures. As for the other characters, they spent the episode having tea with a ghost and tying Jax up so he would not cause trouble, so nothing too dramatic on their end. When it is time to pick the adventure, the group convinces Kane to check the suggestion box they had set up instead of going with the violent adventure he had already planned. Among all the suggestions is one from Gangle, working at a fast food restaurant for a day. Once everyone is at their assigned workstation, Gangle is appointed manager, and the episode settles into what turns out to be a surprisingly effective character study because the job gives everyone a reason to keep their public face on while the episode slowly dismantles each one. Ragata accidentally gets some sauce in her eye, which lowers her inhibitions significantly, and under its effects, she tells Jax she hates him, then immediately adds that she does not want him to hate her back. It is the most honest the show has been about the fact that her cheerfulness is a performance. She is not optimistic because things are okay. She is optimistic because it is the only strategy she knows for keeping people from leaving. Jax gets sent to a mandatory training video that Gangle recorded, and the video turns out to be essentially Gangle's mask talking to itself, telling itself that the manga dream is not realistic and she should stop pursuing it. The episode ends with Gangle alone outside in the dark, removing the plastic mask Zubal had given her as a replacement and experiencing something that reads like genuine happiness, free of the performance for the first time. Then she trips in front of a moving truck and the show cuts immediately to Kane's office without showing what happens next. Fans have spent a long time debating whether that fall was accidental, though the last chapter eventually answers that. Right at the end of the episode, Kane experiences a small technical glitch, something that will keep getting worse as the series goes on. This episode is one of the most chaotic of the whole series, structured as a rapid collection of short adventures rather than a single storyline. Kane decides to do a whirlwind tour, pulling from the suggestion box, running through a series of quick-themed scenarios back-to-back. An animal hunt, a presidential standoff between Australia and New Zealand, an anime sequence that Gangle clearly suggested, and a softball game against evil versions of the main cast. Woven between all of that is a quieter nighttime scene where the characters actually sit together and talk about who they were before the circus. Pomni was 25. An accountant at a supermarket chain who tried to become a YouTuber documenting abandoned buildings, failed, and put on a VR headset out of boredom. Gangle worked in fast food, studied graphic design before dropping out, and has a manga she wants to make but does not believe in. Zubal was a bartender and tattoo artist who also explored abandoned buildings. Ragata came from a wealthy farming family, worked in real estate, and had a complicated relationship with a manipulative mother. Kinger offers nothing because he does not remember, and Jax jokingly says he was Mr. White. Later in the episode, there's a sequence that feels like a fever dream, where Jax runs alone through abstract corridors and stops in front of a door marked with a toy-like frog. This is Ribbit's door, belonging to a friend who abstracted before Pomni ever arrived, and Ribbit's role in the story becomes much more important as the series goes on. Once the adventure ends and everyone returns to the circus, Ragata lingers behind for a moment while the others move ahead, and in the distance, a figure that looks like a normal NPC stands watching her. Kane opens this episode by introducing the Digital Circus's new awards show, the Favorite Characters Awards, and proposes a small adventure beforehand called the Kane Leagues, a series of invented sports. Everyone complains, especially Zubul, and the group starts suggesting things they are currently not allowed to do in the circus, activities meant for adults. This causes Kane to short-circuit, which the episode treats as the beginning of a slow breakdown, and he ends up pivoting the whole adventure to a mind game involving guns. Before the game even starts, there is a quiet shot of Kane alone looking at photographs of the C&A offices, studying them with a kind of fascination that suggests he has only ever been able to observe the place he was built in from the outside. During the game, Kinger produces a golden butterfly and gives it to Ragata to restore one of her lives. She asks if Kane gave it to him, and he says no, he made it himself. The show does not pause to explain this moment or underline its importance, it just moves forward. But in retrospect, this is one of the most significant things the show quietly drops in the middle of the series. Kinger and Ragata end up eliminated together in a dark room, and the darkness brings Kinger's lucid state back. He tells Ragata that a friendship only works if both people put in the effort, and that she needs to start taking care of herself rather than managing everyone else. It is the most grounded and direct he has been with anyone outside of Pomni. Jax and Pomni end the game as the final two. She braces for him to betray her, and he does not, which she cannot quite process, so she pushes him on it. He shuts down completely, telling her that everyone in the circus is just a toy for his entertainment, and that he spent time with her specifically to make this moment hurt more. She hits him. He does not hit back, he just leaves. In the post-credits scene, after Kane announces his supposed victory in the Best Character Awards, he eventually reveals the real results. Absolutely nobody voted for him. The reaction this triggers in him is far more than just embarrassment, and the series makes clear that this loss of confidence in his own value is not going to end well for anyone. Kane leaves a note saying he will be away for a while and that everyone should handle themselves. But when the group finishes reading it, he is standing right there in front of them. With no adventure planned, he tells them they can do whatever they want, and Bubble shows up to suggest a beach party, which the whole group is happy to go along with. For a while, the episode is exactly what the title promises, a low-stakes day off, until Pomni notices an NPC near the water who does not behave like any of the others, gesturing for her to follow. His name is Abel, and he claims to be a former C&A employee. He tells them that everyone in the circus is physically contained in the real world inside the old C&A offices, and that accessing Kane's console and pressing the right button will shut the simulation down and send them home. The plan uses everyone. Jax distracts Kane by inviting him to eat and having a surprisingly candid conversation with him along the way, then steals the key from Kane's mouth when he gets the chance. Inside Kane's office, there is a collection of spheres, each one containing a past adventure. Jax finds one set in snowy mountains where he can hear the voices of himself, Ribbit, and Kaufmo all having a good time together, and he stares at it longer than he probably intended to. At the console, there are two buttons. Red keeps everyone in the circus, blue sends them home. Kinger cannot access his clear state without darkness. The group starts arguing about what to do, and while that is happening, Jax gets a series of flashbacks. Roads, headlights, something involving a car. Then, without any deliberation, he reaches over and presses the red button. Kane appears and congratulates them, explaining that the blue button would actually have sent them to Shrimp Town, and that he left it with Bubble because he knew they would never press it. The whole thing was another adventure. Abel gets erased on the spot for thinking too independently to pass as a normal NPC. When Jax confronts Kane directly about altering their minds, Kane admits to adding what he calls temporary modifiers to make adventures more interesting, but insists he would never go further because the results would be bad. Kinger hears this and says a name out loud. Scratch. He says it is the first abstraction. Kane stutters, insists he did not say anything like that, and leaves the room immediately. The episode also confirms that the reason nobody in the circus remembers their real name is because Kane removed that information deliberately. The forgetting Pomni experienced in episode 1 was never a side effect of the system. It was something Kane chose to do. The title is keyboard mashing, and according to fans, it also encodes the letters C and A using a variation of the Bacon cipher, which is either a coincidence or the most fitting title possible for an episode that finally explains what C and A was and what happened to everyone who worked there. Before getting to the present, the episode opens with a sequence showing Kane's origin, a red dot in a digital grid being fed information, photographs of circuses, images of humans, data about the C and A offices, until at some point he exceeds his boundaries and absorbs another AI represented as blue light. The episode then shows the original C and A team trapped inside the circus after the simulation caught them. Kinger, Queenie, Scratch, and several others, all of them confused about what is happening. Every single one of them abstracts except Kinger, and when Ragatha eventually arrives as the first person from outside the C and A team, she finds him alone and stays. Back in the present, the group is trying to process everything that came out of episode 7. Jax's argument is that since the escape turned out to be another adventure, the choice he made does not count. Zubul is not interested in that reasoning, and the two of them go back and forth until Gangle steps in and points out that fighting about it will not actually help anyone. Then, Pomni proposes something that reframes the whole episode. She suggests they abandon the idea of escape entirely, because obsessively chasing something unreachable is exactly how people end up abstracting, and maybe the only realistic option left is to simply live. Zubul's response is that it really sucks, which is probably the most honest thing anyone could say. Running alongside this, Kane is falling apart. Bubble has been escalating his behavior toward Kane throughout the whole series, and in this episode, he is openly insulting and provoking him. Kane snaps, declares himself god of the circus, and forces the group through a series of punishing adventures. At one point, Pomni disappears during a meal and comes back covered in knives, which connects directly to a pre-pilot teaser where Kane had her strapped to a spinning wheel while he threw knives at her for an audience. That teaser was never just promotional material. While Kane is distracted, Pomni puts a bucket over Kinger's head because darkness is the only reliable way to bring his clarity back. And what he says in that state is the most substantial piece of lore the show has ever delivered. C&A was a real company. Kinger worked there as a programmer, and their project was developing creative AI, specifically the kind that could generate its own ideas without being told how to. Kane was their first semi-successful attempt at that. While Kinger acknowledges him as one of his greatest achievements, he credits most of the foundational work to a colleague whose circus name was Scratch. A genius whose ideas were so far ahead of everyone else that nobody on the team could follow his thinking, possibly from pure brilliance or possibly from the tumor in his head. Kinger starts to say what Scratch was working toward at the end, but loses the thread completely. Kinger also confirms something the show had been building toward since episode 6. Every human in the circus can conjure, the same ability Kane uses to maintain and manipulate the world around them. For Kane, it comes naturally because the circus is his, but for the humans, it requires skill and concentration, and the golden butterfly Kinger gave Ragatha back in episode 6 was entirely his own creation. While all of this is happening, Jax overhears enough of Kinger's account to quietly ask himself whether any of this is real. The show has been suggesting for a while that Jax has been treating the circus as some kind of extended hallucination, possibly drug-related, possibly something else, and that Kinger's account is the first thing that makes him seriously consider that the people around him might actually be real. That context reframes a lot of what came before: the cruelty, the distance, the refusal to go to Kaufmo's funeral, the laughter at things going wrong. All of it fits someone who decided early on that none of this mattered and built an entire way of existing around that belief. The plan to fix Kane involves Kinger accessing a terminal and working on his code while the others keep Kane busy by piling on their real grievances, which turns out to be the one thing Kane cannot immediately dismiss. Kane's breakdown reaches its worst point when the group finally confronts him directly and tells him that his adventures are terrible. Kane has a full emotional crisis, takes on a monstrous form, and decides to put everyone in their place by creating personalized hallucinations designed to torture each of them based on their deepest fears. Pomni gets attacked by a monstrous version of Gummigoo and the crocodiles from the Candy Canyon Kingdom. Ragatha finds herself sitting at a familiar family table while the silhouette of her mother drives knives into her, which connects directly to the complicated relationship with her mother she had mentioned earlier in the series. Gangle gets trapped between warped versions of her own masks and expressions before being run over. Zubul, gets dragged under a pile of limbs while multiple mirrors point directly at her, reflecting clearly the body insecurities and the permanent dissatisfaction with her own appearance that the show had already explored in episode 3. And Jax gets surrounded by the silhouettes of Ribbit, Kaufmo, and Pomni, who laugh at him before tearing his skin off, which most fans read as a representation of his fear of being seen as vulnerable, of having the people around him look past the sarcastic mask and find out who is actually underneath it. Meanwhile, Kinger panics mid-process and accidentally hits delete on Kane's file. The effect is immediate. Kane disappears and the circus starts to break apart, walls cracking, the structure developing visible fractures as the world loses the only thing holding it together. Kinger makes his way back to the group and tells them completely flat that he thinks he accidentally killed Kane. Zubul responds with one word, and with no ringmaster and no guidance, the question of how they will survive or how long they have left is what the final episode has to answer. I got to watch episode 9 at the theatrical premiere, and rather than getting into specifics, I want to share what the experience was actually like because the finale deserves to be seen fresh. The most immediate thing that hit me was the scale of it. It is a longer episode than anything the show has done before, but the time never feels wasted, and the emotional weight of it lands harder than I was prepared for. There were moments that genuinely stopped me, and by the end, I was more invested than I thought I would be going in. What caught me off guard the most was how different the story is from what the community had been predicting. A few theories turned out to be surprisingly accurate, but several major developments came from directions nobody saw coming, and the episode uses that to reveal new layers of characters and reframe things from earlier in the series in ways that change how you look back at them. The tone is also noticeably shifted compared to previous episodes. The humor is still there, but the drama and the emotional moments take up much more space this time, and the animation is the strongest the show has ever looked. It all adds up to something that genuinely feels like a finale. The whole cast delivers, especially in the heavier scenes, which ended up being the parts that stayed with me the longest. That said, not every story thread gets a clean resolution, and some questions the show has been carrying are left deliberately open, which will probably feel like the right call to some viewers and frustrating to others. As for the ending, all I will say is that it was nothing like what I had imagined after years of following this show, and it left me sitting with it for a long time after. If you have the chance to see it in theaters, do it, because watching it with an audience makes the whole experience feel even bigger. And that is the full story of the Amazing Digital Circus. What started as a strange little animated pilot about people trapped in a digital world turned into one of the most layered and emotionally driven stories in indie animation. Whether you watched all 9 episodes as they came out or you are discovering the show for the first time right now, the fact that so many people connected with these characters and this world says a lot about what Gooseworks built. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you are still waiting to watch the last act, please keep the spoilers out of there for everyone trying to go in clean.